Thank you, Sim. Hello, Chris. Hello, Jenna.
Hello.
Hello, Michael.
Hello.
How you guys doing?
Great.
I think this is the first time we've had an all-Alabama ensemble on the stage, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Amazing. And look how good Birmingham is representing. Nice work.
Thank you.
Michael, you had no say in
None.
any of this.
I didn't know until I saw the schedule
Yeah.
and said, oh, I don't have to book a flight. That's great.
For those of you who are not from around here, this is quite exceptional for Alabama weather. Number one, there hasn't been a tornado siren that I have heard yet, and it's not oppressively hot. So we're in this like magical 3 or 4 weeks where we almost have spring.
Almost.
That's great. Anyway, thank you all for being here, and thank you all for being here. We're talking about, I don't remember what the name of this section is, but it's basically MLS collaboration. It's basically how MLSs can talk to each other in friendly ways, in collaborative ways, and do business together even, sharing services in a, non-competitive way, put it that way. So as a way of introduction, you have 3 MLS leaders here, decision makers in the state of Alabama who have a relationship with FMLS, First MLS out of Atlanta. And my position here is, as the ringleader of this, is an MLS consultant. I've done strategic plans for the last 2 years or so, having spent 24 years in the industry, MLS software provider, worked at Zillow for a while, worked at Compass for a while, and have seen the MLS community from all angles. So the reason why I'm here and kind of doing the moderation is because I've helped other MLSs, have a discussion about what these guys have created, with the hub being First MLS out of Atlanta. First MLS has about 55,000 members. Katie, is that an accurate number? Yeah, thank you. So I'd like to start the conversation just by saying every time I've done a strategic plan over the last 2 years, you end up with 4 or 5 bullet points on what the group wants to talk about and wants to do over the next 24 months or so. And number one is always growth. MLSs are always interested in building. They're always interested in increasing their membership, increasing their profit margins and so forth. And so growth, meaning looking beyond your existing borders and looking for partnerships beyond your borders, is a key thing. So having said all that and set the stage, Chris, why don't you start with what your relationship with the FMLS, how did it begin? Number one, where are you? Yeah.
Good question. East Alabama, which we cover mainly 2 counties, but really a 7-county area of East Alabama, about 2 hours south of here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how did the conversation begin with you and FMLS?
Started with just a meeting with Jeremy Crawford. Just met him at a NAR event, and started talking. And he pitched to me the idea, and of course, there's several different options you could choose with a collaboration, data share, all that kind of different stuff. And it was about a 2-year process of settling on something that my leadership was comfortable with and that FMLS was comfortable with, and worked for both of us. So it was a 2-year process of getting my leadership comfortable with the idea, and that FMLS didn't come in to take over. They're going to be a partner.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's the overture that it takes from one MLS to another. And when you said pitch, and I think that's an interesting way to put it, is because it almost seems predatory. It's almost like a negotiation process with MLSs that I've had MLS executives tell me flatly that they don't trust anyone and they'll never share data because we all compete with each other, which I think is somewhat short-sighted, especially what's going on in the industry right now. And so you may have had an attitude about Jeremy's approach to you, but then you got to take it back to your board. And then you have to convince them, oh no, here's the story. And then Jeremy, I got to assume, came to you and did kind of the dog and pony show. Yeah, it's a sales job.
Yes.
Right. So skipping over you, Jenna, because this is a situation that you inherited.
Yes.
And you are in Mobile.
I am in Mobile, yes.
Which is not pronounced mobile, by the way, for those of you who are not around here. And like, so advanced technology, they have a mobile city. So skipping you for now, but Mike, you had a similar kind of situation when Jeremy kind of made an overture to Birmingham. You were involved in that process, I presume, and you heard the same thing that Chris heard. What was your experience like?
Well, it was different than Chris. Like for us, it was we were trying to pick up a product. right? And the product that we were trying to pick up, we were trying to make work out for us at the same time. And through the conversations that we were having, ended up running into Jeremy, and we tried to work out a deal that would be mutual beneficial to both our MLSs through those products. And that's how we really ended up doing it, is our membership wanted a service, our subscribers wanted a service that we weren't providing at the time, and we were trying to find the best possible way at the best possible price points in order to make that work.
And so back to you, Chris, when this conversation starts and you go back to your leadership, you have a board meeting and you just throw this out on the table, what was the response?
Oh, it was not positive.
Yeah.
not positive at all. It did take a lot of explanation on my part.
Yeah.
And of course, like we said earlier, Jeremy Crawford coming to us and saying, hey, it's not the big bad wolf up in Atlanta somewhere, it's a real person.
Yeah.
Running a real company, real MLS.
And we're not here to take you over. We're not going to shut the building down. No one's going to lose their jobs. This is really all about, as you said, Michael, it's the matching of products. It's the economies of scale that can be achieved here. And I think the biggest problem that we have, I mean, industry-wide, is when these conversations are started, that we generally start with data share. It's like, we want your data. Like, we want something from you. There's the pitch, and at some point in that deck, there's going to be, give us your listings,
right.
And that's where the predatorial aspect of it is. But what I'm hearing from I've heard from all of you, is that the data is a part of it. It may be the most, I guess, the most difficult part to get over from a leadership standpoint. That this is a takeover, but really it's all about sharing of services. And Jenna, that's what you mentioned is a big positive in Mobile.
Absolutely. We really enjoy being partners with FMLS. I get incredible customer service. I can Teams them. I have great relationships. I can pick up the phone and call them. We've also collaborated together with a dual entry system with our neighboring MLS, and that was great. They're super responsive. I can't say enough good things about them and their communication, which I haven't always received from other vendors.
Yeah. And so the experience as it is now, Michael, can you describe, I mean, from like a lay of the land perspective, like what does the relationship look like? And I mean, if you mentioned specific services and products, I mean, that's okay.
Yeah, so it's a little bit different for all three of us, right? And I think that's important to note, that it's not a one size fits all. It's a conversation between both MLSs that's like, this is what we're looking for. Is there a way for us to work together for it? So on our end, like, we have the suite of products that we purchase from them, and we have some education pieces where they have some trainers that will come down and see us, but at the same time, they don't come down wearing an FMLS shirt, right? We slap them in a Greater Alabama shirt. Our agents don't know that we're working in this kind of way. And that looks differently from what you guys have and everything else, but at the same time, it works for both of us.
Yeah, from a membership perspective, Chris, I think you mentioned on the call that this has been a sum positive for you. I mean, maybe it was a little rocky at first because everyone assumed that something bad eventually was going to take place, and it didn't. What's the attitude now, and how long has it been, by the way?
We're still fairly new. We launched the data sharing collaboration this past October.
Yeah.
And within the first, you mentioned MLSs and growth and what we all want. Within the first 3 months, and we're a smaller MLS also, but within the first 3 months, we had 13 brokerages join up that wouldn't have normally joined up to get the tools, the exposure for their listings, that sort of thing. But it's, at first, it was, of course, anytime you swap anything in an MLS, we talked about it earlier, changing their button.
Sure.
Moving the button.
Right.
Even though we were on Matrix before, and of course we're still on Matrix through FMLS. There were a lot of buttons that changed, and just it still looked like Matrix, but it's taken a few months for everybody to get comfortable. But now that's pretty much passed, and everybody's used to it.
So, Jenna, what platform do you guys use?
We use Matrix.
And with a relationship with FMLS, because of the structure, I guess, of their organization, you didn't have to change anything. It really is just about giving you products, not necessarily about making anyone do anything differently.
Right.
Right.
So we get Matrix through FMLS, and then we have so many products that I can't even get all the agents to utilize all of them. But we have such an expansive toolbox that we couldn't be able to offer otherwise.
Right. And so, Michael, as a way of geography, for those of you who aren't familiar with the geographies that we're talking about here, Atlanta is like, how, down I-20?
Yeah, like an hour and a half.
An hour and a half. Is there market overlap between Birmingham?
Yeah, well, our reach goes all the way over to the edge of the county. So we cover 13 counties, so we go all the way to the state line. So
Right.
our counties on the east side of the state definitely bleed over with their coverage over on the Georgia side.
Right, and so that makes sense. From a geographical standpoint, you have people who are buying and selling properties on either side of the state line, and so the relationship with Atlanta makes sense. And some MLS collaborations, as we discussed in our call, don't necessarily have to have, I guess, adjacent geography, like you, Jenna. You're Mobile, and for those of you who aren't familiar, Mobile is all the way down south, about 4 hours from here, 3 hours from here.
4 hours.
And has very little in common with Metro Atlanta, but
Right.
there is a positive. Like, what's the data arrangement between the two?
So we can see FMLS's information, but they also have it to where we can check a box and our agents only see GCMLS, or they can have it where they can see all of the data partners on there. So it gives them flexibility because we do have agents that are in Georgia and they love Matrix, so they're like, hey, let's go down to Mobile, let's join, let's see what they've got. And we've had several out-of-state members join with us for the products.
Similar story, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah, how far are you from Atlanta?
About an hour and a half, yeah, right down to 85. So we are pretty close, and I think something important to mention too, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but the collaboration can take many different forms. We sort of went all in, similar to Gulf Coast with having FMLS vend us a lot of the products, but it could be data share, it could be just collaborating on a few different products,
Right.
All sorts of stuff. But yeah, we're an hour and a half below, but we're also next to a military base, which is, we constantly have soldiers and families moving in and out. So a data share doesn't really matter where it is, because there's families moving in from all over the country that we're looking forward to expanding into.
So do you, the three of you, have any visibility into your markets, or is it just like a uniform situation with FMLS? Like you don't see each other's?
Yes, we can.
We can.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then FMLS has partnerships beyond you as well. I mean, are there, those all are I guess, data repositories that you're also able to see as well? Do you have any visibility
If
beyond?
we sign the agreement with them, right?
Say it again.
So if you sign the agreement with them, so it's one of those
Oh,
things,
right,
like
got
if they
it.
had someone,
Got it.
like, because even though all the data is coming from FMLS, like in that one feed, if we chose not to see East Alabama, we wouldn't see it, right? If we chose Mobile, we would see Mobile.
Right.
So we have control over those kinds of things. We would sign agreements directly with those.
So, Jenna, you mentioned the shared services. I assume this means costs were lower, like you're using something that you wouldn't have been able to afford, or you wouldn't have been able to afford the price per user, and now it's like this
Correct.
scale. Are there specific examples of that?
Well, Remine is one of them. We have Remine Pro, and we did the dual entry setup with them, and we collaborated. We worked through all the issues. I work closely with FMLS and the Remine system,
Right.
so to make it work. But we couldn't. I think I looked up the pricing for it, and it just wouldn't have been practical.
Right. Any future plans? I mean, I understand that the situation for all of you is pretty positive. I mean, you had good results. Chris, you're fairly new with this, but I mean, is there a pathway? Is there like a logical next stage for the partnership that you guys could have any visibility into?
As far as
Maybe new products that you can come together on and you can, maybe build on?
right now, we're just concentrating on getting some more agreements signed and opening up
Yeah.
some more areas to the data share
Yeah.
with some other partners. Right now, we got so many products, like you were saying. We're
So
still
many.
trying to digest all the information and get our folks trained up on the products, get them using the products, and get them
Yeah.
used to it.
So for folks out there, and again, like I said, my experience is that every MLS is looking to grow. Every MLS has an opportunity to have conversations. And that conversation, even though it happened with you and said, early friction was smoothed over, that was largely your role, was to make sure that, hey, this is not a big deal. We're not going to get challenged by this, because in your position, you would be the person who was maybe most at risk in that,
Correct.
in that situation. So what advice, and I'll ask all of you this, but what advice would you have for MLSs who are looking to to be in the Jeremy Crawford role, to be in the FMLS role, to reach out and look over the fence at someone? Like how might have you done something differently than what was done?
You want me to go first?
Yeah,
I
go
can talk. So in a lot of different ways, like differently when you're talking with your subscribers, when you're talking with your board leadership, it's important to kind of calm the waters a little bit. Understand like, hey, we're gonna have a contract in place. Nothing's gonna happen outside of the contract. We know what's gonna happen, we know when it's gonna happen. And then on the other side of the fence, when you're dealing with another MLS, the most important thing is to listen, right? Listen to see what can happen, have weird ideas of, yeah, we didn't think we could possibly do that, but let's do something silly, right? Just the idea of being open to have the conversation, and it's not an overnight conversation, right? It can be a year, it can be 2 years, it can be 10 if that's what it takes, but being open to the conversation of just, hey, can we find ways to work together? Can we find ways to get things done? I know I've definitely, to the vendors in the room, I've done that too, of like, hey, this is something that we're looking at doing. The price point isn't there, but what if I convince 3 of my friends to do the same thing at the same time? It's just more about trying to find ways to facilitate things, just so everyone's subscribers benefit at the end of the day.
And it started with a relationship. Yep. Like, again, being in the room with boards of directors who are trying to figure out a way to do this. CEO to CEO may not always work. There are famous data shares around the country where the 2 MLSs have no other relationship other than the friendship between the leadership. It has to make sense for the broker. I mean, is there anything that you guys could add about like what the sum positive for your brokerages have been? You mentioned, there's the addition of those people, but ultimately the members that we serve just want to pay less money for more stuff. I mean, and so that appears to be, what's happened here. I mean, from a staff perspective, Jenna, is there anything that you would say like maybe to calm people's, fears about some of those things and talking points around that?
I just tell them you have to be patient with anything. So if there's an issue with maybe they're not understanding how the system works and they get frustrated, then I will take that time to sit down and be like, okay, we have to go through these steps. It's not like that.
Right.
So it's the patience and being very transparent with them, I think helps.
Yeah. Anything to add to that, Chris?
If you are in those conversations or wanting to start the conversations, I would say don't be afraid to ask. We had a product we were using that my leadership says, hey, if we do this, we absolutely have to keep this product. And so we asked, and ended up all of FMLS, they adopted it for their entire network. So it was something that I'm not sure if they were looking at it beforehand, but I guess we might have pushed them kind of over the top. And
right.
my people were happy. They felt like they got something because we are much smaller than FMLS. So,
right.
So it was almost like a negotiation, but don't be afraid to ask. And FMLS asked some stuff from us too, and we were able to find middle ground. So just don't be afraid.
Well, in my advice, similarly, my advice is around the conversation. It's just building relationships and trust. I mean, having been a vendor for a long time in my career, when you talk to MLSs, there's always the trust is the biggest barrier to get over. And it's no different when 2 MLSs are talking to each other, is that there's always some hint that somebody's got something up their sleeve, and you can have as much paperwork as you want, but if you don't trust the person across the table from you. So my advice, was the data share thing needs to be maybe the 5th or 6th talking point on the one pager instead of the first thing, because that's like, we're gonna get married. Someone's gonna lose their job. We're selling the building, So anyway, thank you for your time here, and thank you for the success story, and thank you for representing our lovely state so well. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.